This is a demo on how to trim your pots, your cylinder and cups and so forth. So here I got a leather hard cup. You saw me kind of press on it. I also have some fresh clay, and then you'll need your trimming tools. These are two are kind of like your ear-shaped ones, I call them. And then we have a smaller one. This one has a square end and a rounded end. You can see the rounded end here and the square end here. And then I also use a metal rib. Sometimes that comes in really handy on smoothing the trim marks away. So the hardest part is getting your pot centered on the wheel. And what I like to do is I flip it upside down, and then I look at the rings that are already on the metal surface of the wheel. And then I try to visually kind of center that as well as possible. Get your wheel kicking. You don't need it going super fast. And then I kind of use this tap method, and this is something you're going to have to practice, and kind of tapping it where it's off center, tapping it into center. That's one method, but if it's really off center, you can always use a tool. You can use your needle tool or a trim tool, and then you just steadily, like without, let your hand really be steady, and then let it kind of make a mark on the pot. And wherever it makes a mark on the pot, you want to move it to the opposite end where the mark was. And then you keep doing this. So I'm marking it again, and the mark is going to get longer and longer around the pot as it gets more centered. And then you move it again, and you just keep doing this until that mark is all the way around your pot, or your pot looks pretty darn centered. So I keep doing this until it gets centered. But I prefer the tap method. So I get it close enough into the center, and then I kind of tap it just ever so lightly. I'm barely touching it. This is a technique that just takes patience and a gentle touch. And then I kind of hold my finger out to see how well that is centered, and then I tap it a little bit more to get that centered, and that's pretty darn close. So then you're going to take your clay, and what I like to do is like to make 3 pieces. You're going to need 3. And then I kind of roll them into these like thumb-shaped lugs. They're a little thicker than my thumb. But they're about the size of my thumb. You see there. So I make 3 lugs of clay. And you don't want these too small. You also don't want them too big. So about the size of your thumb is a pretty good size. And then you always want 3 to make this triangle. So what you're going to do is you're going to hold your hand down, pressing down on your pot, and then you're going to put it to the side, and then press it into the pot. And always press at a 45-degree angle. Never press it straight down or straight up, straight into the pot. So that's sitting up. You want it 45, never towards the pot because you can damage your rim, and never straight down or else it's not going to stick your pot to the wheel. And then you want to do it in 3 sections. So I have one there. So I'm making a triangle. So then I'm going to have one here and one there. And it's kind of nice to just make a little mark on your pot like I did, so you know where to do it. So hand pressing gently down so the pot doesn't move while you press this lug of clay in. Press the lug of clay in. And then you do the third one. And again, make sure that triangle is forming. The triangle is the most sturdy geometric shape. And that's going to help keep that pot on the wheel while you're trimming. And I kind of jiggle it a little bit to make sure that it's actually stuck. And it's pretty good. So you're going to get your wheel spinning, just like if you were throwing. And I like to start with this kind of ear-shaped and this flatter end. Kind of get rid of that bevel or that flange that's on the pot. So I kind of rest my hand to support it, and then I have one hand just kind of gliding over the top. And you always want to do this on the right side, always at 3 to 5 area, just like you were when you're throwing. And then that trimming tool, it will just shave that pot down. And I always have my hand that's not holding the trimming tool kind of resting on the pot. And what that does is if it starts to wobble or anything like that, I can feel it and I can catch it. And I'm slightly pressing down with my other hand, and that allows that pot to stay sturdy. So I'm using that bigger rounded end, and then I'm just kind of going up and down. So then I'll take my smaller tool, and I'll kind of make a mark here on how wide I want that foot. So I have that ring now, and now I will trim everything on the inside of that to create the inside of the foot. And you want to be very careful. You just do a little bit at a time, check your thicknesses. You might want to be careful here because you might trim through the bottom. And if you trim through the bottom, that's okay. You'll just have to put that cup in the reclaim and try another time. I guarantee you will trim through at least one bottom during this class. So if it happens, don't worry about it. It is a technique that needs to be practiced to perfect. So I'm kind of just tapping that and feeling how soft or sturdy it is. It's pretty firm, so I know I have a little bit more clay I can get out of there. So I'm just going to go slowly with a little bit of clay at a time. And you never want to go past, you always want to go on the right side. You never want to start trimming and go past that center and to the left, or you're going to gouge your pot. So be very careful. So I'm only working from that 3 to 5 o'clock angle on the right side of the pot. And sometimes I use a metal rib to kind of smooth it out. If there's a lot of like trimming marks, you can just kind of glide that rib. But you really want to be careful with this because it could really gouge into the pot. Okay? So if you're not comfortable with using the metal rib, I would suggest not doing it on your first couple pots. So now I'm thinning out that foot some more. And just trimming it down until I get that nice contour that I like and the wall thickness is correct. So here I'm trimming on the side. I'm kind of digging into it a little bit to create that line of where that foot is going to start and end on the pot. So I'm going to take that flatter end, the squared end trimming tool, to get that nice angle on the inside that I want. So different tools can make different marks. They can get you different angles. There's dozens and dozens of different trimming tools out there. Your kit has a few different ones, but if you're interested in different shapes or a certain kind of contour to your pot, then I would just go online and look at the different shapes and sizes of trimming tools. There's literally every size and every shape of a trimming tool out there, perfect for different types of uses. So now I'm kind of rounding off that edge. It was really squared, and I really kind of want to round that off a bit. Make that foot a little skinnier, a little taller. And then I'm going to take my metal rib and I'm going to smooth out all these trim marks by just kind of holding it there and then letting that sharp edge kind of glide across. And I'm kind of cutting into it a little bit. This takes practice, so be careful using the metal rib because it can't be sharp, and if it gets caught, it can slice your finger. So again, be very careful when doing this and be gentle with it. Do not go too fast. Now I'm going to, just like we compress our rims, we're going to compress our feet. So I'm going to trim that out a bit more, but then I will hold my fingers, kind of pinching that rim, and then I'll rock my index finger back and forth on the top of this. And then what that does is it smooths the foot so that you don't have a sharp foot that will scratch a surface of a table, and then it gives you a nice bevel and really kind of finishes it out, which is really nice. So now I come back because I think it's still a little too thick, so I got to take out a little bit more clay. And then slowly stop your wheel, and then just peel up. Be very careful with this, not to be too forceful, but peel up your lugs of clay, put them to the side, and then make sure that when you pull up your cup, you kind of jiggle a little bit, and it should pop right off. And there you go. And there's an articulated foot. And you kind of just clean it up, and then you can put it aside, wrap it in plastic, and it's ready for a handle. Here, I am just going to show you how to make a foot that is more part of the form and less articulated. And so I'm just going to speed this up here, and you can see and watch me kind of do the exact same thing, but instead of creating that line where that foot starts and ends, I'm going to have it continuously move through the pot. So here I'm using that larger kind of angled, rounded part of that um, bigger tool to kind of create that nice transition from the body to the foot. Again, being very careful to trim out the inside. I don't trim too far and too deep. After a while, you do this a couple hundred times and you will basically have a muscle memory on how thick your pots are. And everyone trims differently, but eventually you'll just kind of know when it's a perfect thickness. But again, just double check it by tapping on it. And if it feels a little soft, stop. If it feels really firm, you can probably take off a little bit more. So now I'm using that contour, the shape of that tool, to bevel that out, and then I'm cutting out more because it's still pretty thick. And then using that curve of the tool to curve that foot up. And then I'm going to use my rib tool again to help me get that nice transition, that rounded transition there, using the shape of my tools to create the shape that I want on my pots. It's always a nice thing to do. Okay. Finishing up the inside, and now I'm ready to smooth out that foot. So here I'm going to actually be doing a little bit more pressure. I'm going to try to rock that clay back out from the inside out to create a nice kind of rounded lipped foot. And it's going to look really nice. So if your pot's still too stiff, you can use a little bit of water to do this, but barely any water. Like almost only a drop is all is needed. But if it's the proper thickness, you shouldn't need any water at all. And there you go. So now I have this nice rounded foot that has no hard line transition, but it has a nice little bevel at the end, and it's smooth. So you can see the two different feet there.